You just picked the wrong man to steal from.
Owen Belrose stared at the college tuition notice in his oil-stained hands, the red past due stamp spreading across his daughter's future like spilled paint on concrete. 17 years of marriage. 17 years of working 60-hour weeks in his motorcycle fabrication shop, and somehow they were broke. The envelope had been buried under utility bills on Sienna's side of the kitchen counter, hidden, like everything else these days. "Sienna!" His voice echoed through their split-level house in Waynesboro, Virginia. No answer. Her Lexus wasn't in the driveway, but then again, it rarely was anymore. Owen walked to his workshop behind the house, past the skeletal remains of a 1947 Indian chief he'd been restoring for Walt Henderson, a retired state trooper. The bike had history, dark history. Walt's partner had died on it during a chase 3 years back. Now Walt wanted it rebuilt, claimed it would help him remember his friend properly. Some things look fine once you restore them, Owen thought, running his hand along the chrome. But they're never the same inside. His phone buzzed, a text from his 17-year-old daughter, Lila. "Dad, did you pay my tuition? They're saying I might not graduate." Owen's jaw tightened. He dialed First National Bank. "Mister Belrose, I'm showing your savings account balance at $14.37, the teller said, after verifying his information. "That's impossible. There should be $43,000 in savings, plus $18,000 in Lila's college fund." "Sir, those accounts show withdrawal activity over the past 6 months. All transactions were authorized with the proper PIN and identification." Owen's grip on the phone whitened his knuckles. "What kind of withdrawals?" "Cash advances, mostly. Some transfers to online gambling sites." "The college fund was liquidated entirely 3 weeks ago." The line went quiet except for Owen's breathing. "Sir, are you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here." That evening, Sienna returned home carrying shopping bags from Target and Bath and Body Works. She looked good, better than she had in years. New highlights in her auburn hair, expensive-looking jewelry Owen didn't recognize. "Where have you been?" Owen asked from the kitchen table, the tuition notice centered in front of him like evidence. "Shopping with Andrea. You know how she gets when she's stressed about her divorce." Sienna set down her bags and opened the refrigerator. "Did you eat? I can make something quick. I called the bank today." Her hand froze on the refrigerator handle. "Oh? Lila's college money is gone. All of it. The savings, too." Sienna turned slowly. Her face had shifted into what Owen recognized as her defensive mode. Chin up, eyes narrowed slightly. "I was going to tell you. My root canal last month was more complicated than we thought. The specialist required payment up front and $61,000 for dental work? There were complications, infections. I had to see multiple specialists." She moved to the sink, started washing dishes that were already clean. "You wouldn't understand the medical bills unless you've been through it." Owen studied his wife's profile. After 17 years, he knew her tells. The way she washed dishes when she was lying, the slight tremor in her voice when she felt cornered. "Show me the receipts." "What?" "The dental receipts, insurance paperwork, something." Sienna's scrubbing intensified. "They're in my car. I'll get them tomorrow. Get them now." "Owen, I don't appreciate being interrogated in my own kitchen. I handled a medical emergency the best way I could. If you have a problem with that, Lila might not graduate." That stopped her. For just a moment, Owen saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "I'll figure something out," she said quietly. "We'll figure something out, together, like we always have." But even as he said it, Owen knew something fundamental had changed. The woman washing dishes at his sink looked like his wife, sounded like his wife, but felt like a stranger. Over the next week, Owen paid attention, really paid attention. Sienna left the house by 10 most mornings, returning after dinner. She claimed to be helping Andrea with divorce paperwork, but Andrea lived 40 minutes away in Charlottesville. That was a lot of divorce paperwork. On Thursday, Owen was replacing the transmission on a customer's Harley when his neighbor Winston appeared in the shop doorway. "Afternoon, Owen. That Indian chief's coming along nice." "Thanks. Should have her running by the weekend." Winston lingered, hands in his pockets. "Say, I was over in Richmond last Saturday for my nephew's wedding. Thought I saw Sienna at one of those poker places near the casino." Owen looked up from his wrench. "A poker place?" Yeah, those card rooms they got now, legal and all, but they're pretty serious business. Saw her talking to some slick-looking fellow in an expensive suit. You sure it was her? Pretty sure. She was wearing that red dress she had on at the Henderson's barbecue, the one with the little flowers. Owen knew the dress. Sienna had bought it 3 months ago, claiming it was on clearance. $200 for a clearance dress. That evening, Owen waited until Sienna was in the shower, then searched her purse. Credit card receipts from restaurants he didn't recognize. Gas station charges from towns he'd never heard of. And at the bottom, folded small and hidden behind her insurance card, a business card. Cooper Blaine, life strategy consultant. Helping you achieve your authentic success. The next morning, after Sienna left for another day of helping Andrea, Owen drove to Radio Shack in Staunton and bought a voice-activated recorder. $49. Small enough to hide under the driver's seat of Sienna's Lexus. He felt sick doing it. In 17 years of marriage, he'd never snooped, never questioned, never doubted. But $61,000 didn't vanish for dental work, and poker rooms didn't take insurance. 3 days later, Owen retrieved the recorder. What he heard sent a chill through him. Told you, Cooper, he's not suspicious. Owen's too busy with his little bikes to notice anything. A man's voice, smooth and confident. But he will notice eventually. Men like your husband, they're not stupid, just limited in their thinking. He thinks I was at dental surgery for 6 hours yesterday. 6 hours. Can you believe that? The beauty of working with housewives is their husbands never question the domestic details. Medical appointments, shopping trips, friend emergencies, it's all invisible to them. God, you're right. Sometimes I think I could rob a bank and he'd assume I was getting groceries. Cooper's laugh was low and mean. Speaking of which, how much did you put down yesterday? $3,000. I was up for a while, but then Sienna's voice trailed off. But then you chased your losses. Like always. I don't have an obsession if that's what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. You've lost $68,000 in 4 months. Your daughter's college fund, your savings, and now you're talking about a second mortgage. The land is worth twice what we paid for it. Owen's shop sits on 3 acres right outside town. With the right development, which is where I come in. But first, we need Owen's signature on the transfer papers. He'll never sell the land. That shop is his whole life. He will if he doesn't know he's selling it. I've had success with similar situations. Power of attorney for medical reasons works well, or we can forge the documents entirely. I have contacts. Owen's hand shook as he rewound the recording. His wife of 17 years was planning to steal his land with the help of some con artist named Cooper Blaine. But it got worse. Andrea introduced us, She said you specialized in helping women transition to their authentic selves. I thought it was just life coaching nonsense. But then you showed me that poker room in Vegas, and you discovered you had a talent for risk. I discovered I had a talent for winning. At first. Everyone wins at first. That's how it works. But I can win again. I know I can. I just need more time, more money. More of Owen's money. It's my money, too. I've been married to him for 17 years. I've earned it. Have you told him about us? A pause. Then, there's nothing to tell. We're business partners. Business partners don't do what we did in that hotel room in Richmond. That was just stress relief. It was 3 times. In 2 different hotels. And my apartment. Owen stopped the recording. He'd heard enough. That night, Owen couldn't sleep. He lay in bed listening to Sienna breathe, studying her profile in the moonlight. The woman next to him had gambled away their life savings, was planning to steal his land, and was sleeping with another man. But he didn't wake her up, didn't confront her, didn't explode. Instead, Owen began to plan. Over the next week, Owen researched Cooper Blaine. The man had a website full of inspirational quotes and testimonials from clients who'd transformed their lives. He ran seminars for women in transition and specialized in asset optimization strategies. It was all nonsense. Cooper was a con man who targeted unhappy housewives, got them hooked on gambling, then manipulated them into signing over property or taking out loans against their husband's assets. Owen found 3 other women Cooper had scammed in Virginia alone. One had lost her house. Another had filed for bankruptcy. The third had attempted to end her own life when her husband discovered she'd gambled away their retirement savings. Cooper Blaine was a predator, and Sienna was his latest victim. Or maybe she was his partner. Owen wasn't sure which was worse. On Friday morning, Owen drove to the county courthouse and requested copies of all property records for his land. What he found made his vision blur with rage. Transfer papers had been filed 3 days ago. Papers with Owen's forged signature, witnessed by someone named Janet Mills, notarized by a man Owen had never met. According to the documents, Owen had agreed to sell his 3 acres to Blaine Development LLC for $200,000, with the stipulation that the sale would be finalized upon Sienna's signature as co-owner. The only problem was that Owen had never signed anything, never met Janet Mills, and had never heard of Blaine Development LLC until this moment. Cooper wasn't just planning to steal Owen's land. He'd already started the process. That afternoon, Owen made a decision that would change everything. He was going to destroy Cooper Blaine. But first, he needed to know everything about the man, his habits, his weaknesses, his schedule, his other victims. Owen had spent 17 years as a demolition derby champion before opening his motorcycle shop. He understood the mechanics of destruction. You don't ram head-on into your target. You wait for the right moment, hit the weak point, and let physics do the rest. Owen began following Cooper. The man lived in an expensive condo complex in Charlottesville, drove a leased BMW, and spent most afternoons at an upscale coffee shop called Grind, where he held consultations with potential clients, all of them women going through divorces or struggling with unfulfilling marriages. Owen watched from his pickup truck as Cooper worked his routine. First, he'd listen sympathetically to the woman's problems. Then he'd suggest she deserved better, that she was capable of more than she realized. Finally, he'd casually mention opportunities for financial independence through strategic risk management. It was predatory and calculated. Cooper wasn't helping these women. He was grooming them. On Tuesday evening, Owen followed Cooper and Sienna to a restaurant in Richmond. He watched them hold hands across the table, watched Cooper lean in close to whisper something that made Sienna laugh. She looked happy. Happier than she'd looked with Owen in years. That hurt more than the money. But Owen didn't let the hurt cloud his thinking. Instead, he took pictures, lots of pictures. The next day, Owen visited Walt Henderson to deliver the restored 1947 Indian chief. Walt was in his 70s now, silver-haired and weathered, but his eyes were still sharp. He'd spent 30 years as a state trooper before retiring. "She's beautiful, Owen. Really beautiful." Walt ran his hand along the restored chrome. "Hard to believe she was ever in that accident." "Sometimes the worst damage is on the inside," Owen said. "Frame was cracked in 3 places. Had to rebuild the whole thing from scratch." Walt nodded. "My partner Jimmy died on this bike. Did I ever tell you the whole story?" "Just bits and pieces. Jimmy was chasing a con man who'd been targeting elderly folks in nursing homes. Romance scams, mostly. Would convince lonely widows to wire money to fake accounts. Jimmy got word the guy was leaving town, tried to stop him on this bike. Chase went bad. Jimmy hit a guardrail at 70 miles per hour. Walt's voice was quiet. "Thing is, we never caught the con man. He disappeared after Jimmy died. Probably moved on to another state, found new victims. That's rough. The worst part? Jimmy's widow said she understood why he died. Said there's nothing lower than a man who preys on people's loneliness, their hope for something better. She said Jimmy died protecting other people from that kind of pain." Owen absorbed this. "What happened to the con man eventually?" Walt's smile was thin. "Funny thing about con men. They always think they're smarter than everyone else. Usually what brings them down in the end." That evening, Owen created a fake email account and sent messages to the 3 women he'd identified as Cooper's previous victims. He introduced himself as someone investigating Cooper for insurance fraud and asked if they'd be willing to share their experiences. 2 of them responded within hours. Jennifer Patterson had lost $47,000 after Cooper convinced her to invest in a guaranteed return poker strategy. She'd mortgaged her house to cover the losses when Cooper's system failed. Linda Watts had been introduced to Cooper by her sister. He'd convinced her that her husband was financially controlling for not supporting her investment opportunities. She'd ended up divorcing her husband and losing half her assets in gambling debts before realizing Cooper had manipulated her into destroying her own marriage. Both women were willing to testify about Cooper's methods if Owen could guarantee their anonymity and safety. By Friday, Owen had a complete picture of Cooper's operation. The man targeted women in emotional crisis, convinced them they deserve better than their current lives, then gradually introduced them to gambling as a form of empowerment. When they inevitably lost money, Cooper would suggest ways to access more funds, usually involving their husband's assets. Sienna wasn't Cooper's first victim, and she wouldn't be his last unless Owen stopped him. On Saturday morning, Waynesboro hosted its annual antique car rally. Main Street was lined with restored classics, Model T Fords, 57 Chevys, pristine Corvettes from the 60s. Owen had attended every year since moving to town, usually with Sienna and Lila. This year, he went alone. Owen parked his pickup truck near the courthouse and walked through the crowd, nodding to neighbors and customers. Near the bandstand, he spotted Cooper Blaine talking to two women Owen didn't recognize. Both looked to be in their 40s, both wore expensive clothes, and the slightly desperate expression of people trying too hard to appear happy. Fresh victims. Owen watched Cooper work his charm, watched him hand each woman a business card, watched him suggest they meet for coffee to discuss their untapped potential. It was sickening, but it was also an opportunity. Owen walked to his truck and retrieved the rebuilt 1947 Indian Chief. He'd brought it to show Walt Henderson at the rally, but now he had a different plan. The bike rumbled to life with a deep, throaty growl that turned heads throughout the crowd. Owen let it warm up, then guided it slowly through the parked cars toward the bandstand. Cooper looked up at the sound, his conversation interrupted. The Indian Chief was impossible to ignore. 6 feet of gleaming chrome and black steel, its engine note echoing off the surrounding buildings like controlled thunder. Owen parked the bike 20 feet from Cooper and shut off the engine. The sudden silence felt pregnant with possibility. "Heck of a machine," Cooper called out, clearly trying to appear casual in front of his potential victims. Owen nodded. 1947 Indian Chief. Completely restored. Cooper approached, his companions following. Up close, Owen could see the man's calculation, evaluating the bike's value, probably wondering if Owen was someone worth cultivating as a client. Must be worth some serious money. More than money, Owen said. This bike has history. The last owner was a state trooper who died chasing a con man. Cooper's smile faltered slightly. That's unfortunate. The trooper's partner told me something interesting about con men, said they always think they're smarter than everyone else. Usually, what brings them down. Now Cooper's eyes narrowed. Something in Owen's tone had shifted from casual conversation to something else entirely. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" Owen smiled. "We have mutual friends, Sienna Bellerose, for instance." The color drained from Cooper's face. "And Jennifer Patterson. And Linda Watts. Small world, isn't it?" Cooper took a step back, his potential victims looking confused. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." Owen started the Indian Chief's engine again. "Just a conversation that's been a long time coming." Cooper turned and walked quickly toward the street, leaving his bewildered companions behind. Owen followed on the motorcycle, keeping pace as Cooper broke into a jog, then a run. The chase wound through the antique car display, between parked Thunderbirds and restored Mustangs. Cooper pushed through crowds of spectators, knocking over a folding chair and spilling someone's lemonade. Owen stayed behind him on the motorcycle, never hurrying, never losing ground. The Indian Chief's deep rumble announced their progress through the rally like a hunting horn. Cooper reached his BMW and fumbled with his keys. Owen stopped the motorcycle 10 feet away and revved the engine once, twice. Cooper's hands were shaking as he started his car. The chase continued through Waynesboro's residential streets. Cooper drove erratically, running stop signs and taking corners too fast. Owen followed at exactly the speed limit, never losing sight of the BMW's taillights. Near the edge of town, Cooper's desperation overcame his judgment. He took a sharp right onto Deer Trail Road, a narrow country lane that dead-ended at the Shenandoah River. Owen smiled and reached into his jacket pocket. Earlier that morning, he'd strung piano wire across the road at bumper height, anchored between 2 oak trees. The wire was nearly invisible, but it would stop a car completely. Cooper's BMW hit the wire at 30 miles per hour. The car's front end crumpled, steam hissing from the radiator. Cooper sat stunned behind the wheel, a thin trickle running from his nose. Owen parked the motorcycle and walked to the driver's side window. "We need to talk." Cooper's door was jammed from the impact. Owen yanked it open with a screech of twisted metal. "Get out!" Cooper climbed out on shaking legs. His expensive suit was torn, his carefully styled hair disheveled. "Look, I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been sleeping with my wife. I know you convinced her to gamble away our life savings. I know you forged my signature on property transfer documents. I know you've done the same thing to at least 3 other women in Virginia alone." Owen's voice was calm, conversational. Somehow that made it more terrifying than shouting would have been. "Should I continue?" Cooper said nothing. "Here's what's going to happen," Owen continued. "You're going to disappear, leave Virginia, change your name, find a new line of work, something legitimate this time. And if I don't," Owen gestured to the crumpled BMW. "This was just a demonstration. Next time won't be an accident." Cooper straightened, trying to recover some dignity. "You can't threaten me. I'll call the police." "With what? The forged documents? The recordings of you and my wife planning to steal my land? The testimony from Jennifer Patterson and Linda Watts?" Owen pulled out his phone and played a portion of the recording he'd taken from Sienna's car. Cooper's voice filled the air. "The beauty of working with housewives is their husbands never question the domestic details." Cooper's face went white. "Those are just the highlights," Owen said. "I have hours of material. Conversations, photos, financial records, enough to put you in prison for fraud, forgery, and extortion." Owen stepped closer. "But I'm not going to the police. I'm handling this myself. What do you want? I want you gone, tonight. And I want every penny you stole from those women returned. I don't have that kind of money. Then find it. Sell your car, liquidate your assets, borrow from whoever bankrolled your operation. I don't care how you do it, but those women get their money back." Owen turned to walk away, then stopped. "One more thing. If you ever contact my wife again, if you ever come back to Virginia, if you ever run another con on another lonely woman anywhere in this country, I will find you. And next time, there won't be a conversation." Owen left Cooper standing beside his ruined car and rode the Indian chief back to town. That evening, Owen was in his workshop cleaning the motorcycle when Sienna burst through the door. Her face was flushed, her eyes wild. "What did you do to Cooper?" Owen continued polishing chrome. "Fixed a problem. He called me. He's leaving town. He says you threatened him." "Did he mention why I might have done that?" Sienna crossed her arms. "I don't know what you think you know." Owen walked to his workbench and pulled down a canvas tarp. Underneath were dozens of photographs, bank statements, printed emails, and a small digital recorder. Sienna stared at the evidence of her betrayal laid out like an autopsy. "How long have you been spying on me?" "Long enough." Owen picked up the recorder and pressed play. Sienna's voice filled the workshop. Owen's too busy with his little bikes to notice anything. Sienna lunged for the recorder, but Owen caught her wrist. "Don't!" His voice was quiet, but something in it made Sienna freeze. "You gambled away Lila's college fund. I was going to replace it. You gambled away our savings. Cooper said we could make it back. You forged my signature to steal my land. That wasn't my idea. You've been sleeping with him." Sienna said, "Nothing." Owen released her wrist and walked to his welding station. He picked up Sienna's wedding ring. She'd left it on the bathroom counter that morning and dropped it into a metal crucible. "What are you doing?" Owen fired up his torch. The ring began to glow red, then white hot. "Something I should have done months ago." He poured the molten gold into the gas tank of a destroyed motorcycle frame, sealing it inside forever. 17 years, Owen said. 17 years of marriage, and this is how it ends. With you stealing from our daughter and lying to my face. Sienna's defiance cracked. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Cooper said what you wanted to hear. That you deserved better, that I was holding you back, that you were smarter than everyone else." Owen set down the torch. "But here's the thing, Sienna. You are smart enough to know that gambling is rigged against you. Smart enough to know that forging signatures is felony fraud. Smart enough to know that sleeping with another man would destroy our marriage. You did all of this anyway. Not because Cooper convinced you, but because you wanted to." Sienna started crying. "I just wanted something more, something exciting. Our life here is so small." "Small?" Owen nodded. "Yeah, I guess building something with your hands, raising a daughter, keeping promises. I guess that's pretty small compared to poker rooms and hotel affairs. He walked to the workshop door and held it open. Get out. Owen, we can work through this. Get out of my shop. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Call Andrea, call Cooper, call whoever you want. Just leave. Sienna wiped her eyes. I'll take half of everything. This house, the business, all of it. That's Virginia law. Owen smiled coldly. Good luck with that. According to the county records, you already signed everything over to me to avoid creditor claims from your gambling debts. It's all notarized and legal. Sienna's face went pale. That's not possible. Jennifer Patterson has a very good lawyer. Turns out she's excellent at document preparation. Amazing what people will do when they find out someone helped destroy their life. Owen had been busy during his week of investigation. With Jennifer's help, he'd filed protective paperwork that placed all marital assets in a trust pending resolution of Sienna's gambling debts. It was complex legal maneuvering, but the end result was simple. Sienna couldn't claim half of anything because she'd already signed it away to protect it from her creditors. You can't do this. It's already done. You have until tomorrow morning to pack your things. After that, anything left in this house becomes property of the trust. Sienna stared at him as if seeing a stranger. You're destroying our family. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just cleaning up the wreckage you left behind. The next morning, Owen woke to find Sienna's closet empty and her car gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen table. Tell Lila I'm sorry. Tell her I'll make this right somehow. Owen crumpled the note and threw it away. Lila came downstairs an hour later, already dressed for school. She poured herself cereal and sat across from her father. Mom's stuff is gone. Yeah. Is she coming back? Owen studied his daughter's face. Lila was 17, not 7. She deserved the truth. No, she's not coming back. Lila nodded slowly. Good. That surprised Owen. Good? She's been lying to us for months, Dad. I'm not stupid. I knew something was wrong when she started disappearing all the time, when she got all secretive about her phone calls, when she started wearing new clothes she couldn't afford. Lila stirred her cereal thoughtfully. Plus, I overheard her talking to Andrea about some guy named Cooper. She said you were boring and predictable, that you'd never amount to anything more than a small-town mechanic. Owen felt a familiar stab of pain. But I told Andrea that Mom was wrong, Lila continued. I said you weren't boring. You were just quiet. I said quiet people are the dangerous ones because they see everything and remember everything. I said Mom better be careful because silence has sharp teeth. Owen stared at his daughter. When had she gotten so wise? Are we going to be okay? Lila asked. Yeah, we're going to be fine. 3 weeks later, Owen received a cashier's check for $68,000. No return address, no explanation. Just the money Cooper had stolen from Jennifer Patterson, Linda Watts, and the Bellerose family. Owen deposited the check and immediately transferred $18,000 to Lila's college fund. The rest went back into savings. A month after that, he got a call from Walt Henderson. Owen, you hear about that fellow Cooper Blaine? What about him? Got arrested in Florida. Seems he was running some kind of romance scam on elderly women down in Miami. Bilked them out of nearly $500,000. Owen wasn't surprised. Men like Cooper didn't change. They just found new hunting grounds. Here's the interesting part, Walt continued. Police said they got an anonymous tip that included financial records, recorded conversations, and testimony from multiple victims. Whoever put that package together knew exactly what they were doing. Owen said nothing. Anyway, they're saying he's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Fraud, exploitation of the elderly, racketeering. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. That evening, Owen was in his workshop rebuilding a transmission when he heard footsteps. He looked up to see Andrea Sullivan standing in the doorway. Andrea was Sienna's best friend, or had been. She was also the woman who'd introduced Sienna to Cooper Blaine. Hello, Owen. Andrea? She stepped into the shop, looking around nervously. I wanted to apologize about Sienna, about Cooper. I never thought... You never thought what? That introducing my wife to a con man might have consequences? Andrea flinched. I was going through my divorce. I was angry at all men, and Cooper seemed like he really understood what women go through. He helped me see that I deserved better than what I had. And what did you have? A husband who worked 60 hours a week to pay for our house and our kids' education. A man who never cheated, never lied, never raised his hand to me. Andrea's voice was bitter. God, I was such an idiot. Owen continued working on the transmission. What do you want, Andrea? I want to make it right somehow. I destroyed Sienna's marriage and yours, and you didn't destroy anything. Sienna made her own choices. But I influenced those choices. I convinced her she was settling, that she could do better. Owen looked up. Could she? What? Could Sienna do better than 17 years of marriage to a man who never cheated, never lied, never raised his hand to her? A man who built a business with his own hands and supported his family without complaint? Andrea stared at him. I don't know. I do. Owen wiped his hands on a rag. The answer is no. What Sienna had was pretty darn good. She just couldn't see it because she was too busy looking for something that doesn't exist. What doesn't exist? The perfect life, the fairy tale. The idea that happiness comes from somewhere outside yourself. Owen's voice was calm, matter of fact. Cooper sold her a fantasy, and she bought it. But fantasies don't pay mortgages or put kids through college or hold your hand when you're sick. Andrea nodded slowly. I know that now, but it's too late. For you and your husband, maybe, but not for everyone. Owen gestured to the doorway. There's a woman named Linda Watts who lives over in Harrisonburg. Cooper destroyed her marriage, too. She could probably use a friend who understands what she went through. You want me to help her? I want you to help yourself. And maybe in the process, you'll help her, too. Andrea left without another word. 2 months later, Owen ran into Sienna at the grocery store in Staunton. She looked older, tired. She was working as a waitress at a diner near the interstate, living in a studio apartment above a laundromat. Hello, Owen. Sienna. They stood in the cereal aisle, two people who'd shared 17 years and now felt like strangers. How's Lila? She's good. Got into Virginia Tech, full scholarship. Sienna's face brightened. That's wonderful. She always was brilliant. She gets that from her mother. The comment hung between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross. Owen, His voice wasn't angry, just tired. Don't apologize, don't explain, don't ask for forgiveness. It's over. We're done. I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I threw away. What I lost. Owen studied her face. She looked sincere, but then again, she'd always been a good actress. Understanding doesn't fix anything, he said finally. I know. But maybe it prevents me from making the same mistakes again. Owen nodded and pushed his cart past her toward the checkout. Owen! He stopped, but didn't turn around. Are you happy? The question surprised him. Was he happy? His marriage was over. His trust in people had been shattered, and he was raising a teenager alone. But Lila was thriving. His business was successful, and he slept peacefully at night, knowing he'd done the right thing. I'm content, he said. That's enough. A year later, Owen attended Lila's high school graduation. She was valedictorian, headed to Virginia Tech on a full academic scholarship to study mechanical engineering. After the ceremony, father and daughter stood together in the school parking lot. Lila looked beautiful in her cap and gown, ready to take on the world. I'm proud of you, kiddo. Thanks, Dad. Lila hugged him tight. For everything. For not falling apart when Mom left. For not turning bitter. For showing me that keeping your word matters more than being exciting. Owen smiled. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. Lila pulled back and looked at him seriously. Dad, do you ever regret it? The way you handled things with Mom and Cooper? Owen considered the question. Cooper was in federal prison. Sienna was starting over with nothing. Their marriage was destroyed. Their family was broken. But Lila was safe. The other women Cooper had victimized got their money back. A predator was off the streets. No, Owen said finally, I don't regret it. I protected what mattered. Even though it cost you your marriage? Owen looked at his daughter. Brilliant, strong, uncompromising in her sense of right and wrong. Some prices are worth paying. 3 months into Lila's freshman year at Virginia Tech, Owen received an unexpected visitor. He was in his workshop rebuilding a 1965 Triumph Bonneville when he heard a car door slam in his driveway. Cooper Blaine stood silhouetted in the workshop doorway. Owen's hand moved instinctively to the wrench on his workbench, but he forced himself to remain calm. Thought you were in federal prison. Good behavior. Early release. Cooper stepped into the shop, and Owen could see the changes imprisonment had wrought. The man was thinner, harder, with new scars on his face and prison tattoos on his forearms. "What do you want?" "Justice." Cooper's voice was different too, rougher, more desperate. "You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just documented it." Cooper laughed bitterly. "You think you're so righteous. You think you're the hero in this story?" "I don't think about it at all." "Nonsense." Cooper moved closer. "You planned everything. The wire across the road, the legal maneuvers, the anonymous tip to the FBI. You orchestrated my downfall like some kind of mastermind." Owen set down his wrench and faced Cooper fully. "You targeted my wife. You convinced her to steal from our daughter. You forged my signature to steal my land." "What did you think would happen?" "I thought I was smarter than a small-town mechanic." "You were wrong." Cooper pulled a Colt from his jacket, a cheap .38 Colt that looked like it had seen better days. His hand was shaking. "Prison changes a man, Owen. Makes him realize that some debts can only be paid in life." Owen studied Cooper's face, the desperation, the rage, the complete breakdown of whatever facade he'd once maintained. This wasn't the smooth con man who'd seduced Sienna. This was something broken and dangerous. "You going to fire at me in my own workshop? I'm going to watch you beg. I'm going to make you understand what you took from me." "What I took from you?" Owen's voice remained steady. "Let me tell you what you took from me. 17 years of marriage. My daughter's respect for her mother. My ability to trust anyone completely ever again. Good. Now you know how it feels." Owen nodded slowly. "You're right. I do know how it feels. And you know what I learned?" "What?" "That some things can't be fixed. Some people can't be saved. And sometimes, the only way to protect what you love is to destroy what threatens it." Owen moved toward his welding station, where several canisters of acetylene gas were stored. Cooper tracked him with the Colt, but didn't fire. "You see, Cooper, you made a fundamental mistake about me. You thought I was just another Mark, another husband too stupid to see what was happening under his own roof." Owen's hand hovered near the main gas valve. "One quick turn would flood the workshop with highly flammable gas. But I'm not a Mark. I'm a man who spent 10 years in demolition derby, learning how to turn vehicles into tools. I'm a man who welds for a living, who understands fire and metal and how to make things explode when I want them to." Cooper's eyes widened as he realized what Owen was suggesting. "You pull that trigger and this whole building goes up like a Roman candle. You, me, everything in here. Is your revenge worth dying for?" Cooper's hand was shaking harder now. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Owen smiled coldly. "Go ahead. Pull the trigger. Let's find out together." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other across the workshop, Owen calm and ready, Cooper desperate and wavering. Finally, Cooper lowered the Colt. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Owen's voice was final. "Because if you ever come near me, my daughter, or anyone I care about again, I won't give you a choice about how this ends." Cooper backed toward the doorway. "You think you won? You think you came out on top?" "I think I survived. That's enough." Cooper left without another word. Owen watched through the window as the man drove away in a rusted pickup truck, probably the only vehicle he could afford after losing everything. Owen never saw Cooper Blaine again. 6 months later, Owen read in the Richmond Times-Dispatch that Cooper had been found dead in a motel room in West Virginia, an apparent case of taking his own life. The article mentioned his criminal history and noted that he'd been struggling to find employment after his release from federal prison. Owen felt nothing when he read it. No satisfaction, no regret, no sense of closure. Cooper Blaine had been a problem that solved itself. Lila came home for Christmas break that year, full of stories about college and her engineering classes. She was dating a boy named Trevor, who treated her with respect and made her laugh. Owen approved. On Christmas Eve, father and daughter sat in the living room, watching snow fall outside the windows. The house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't in years. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever miss Mom?" Owen considered the question carefully. "I miss the woman I thought she was, the woman I married, the mother you had when you were little. But that woman might never have existed." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe the Sienna who gambled away our savings and cheated with Cooper, maybe that was always who she really was, and I just couldn't see it." Lila curled up in her chair. "I used to blame myself, you know. When she started acting different, I thought maybe if I'd been a better daughter, she wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere for happiness. That's not how it works, kiddo. People make choices based on who they are inside, not on what other people do or don't do. I know that now. But it took me a while to understand. Owen looked at his daughter, 20 years old, wise beyond her years, unbroken by the destruction of her family. You turned out pretty amazing despite everything. Because of you. Because you showed me that keeping your word matters, that protecting the people you love is worth any sacrifice, that quiet strength is better than loud promises. Your mother used to say I was boring. Lila's smile was sharp. Mom never understood that boring people are the ones who build the world. Exciting people just burn it down. 2 years later, Lila graduated summa cum laude from Virginia Tech with a degree in mechanical engineering. Owen attended her graduation, bursting with pride as she walked across the stage. After the ceremony, they drove back to Waynesboro together. Lila had accepted a job with an aerospace company in California and would be moving there in the fall. I'm going to miss this place, she said as they pulled into the driveway. It'll always be here when you want to come home. Will you be okay by yourself? Owen smiled. I've got my work, my shop, my routines. I'll be fine. That evening, they sat on the back porch looking out at the 3 acres that Cooper Blaine had tried to steal. The land was more valuable now. Waynesboro was growing, and developers were constantly making offers. But Owen had no intention of selling. You know what I realized? Lila said. What's that? Mom thought this place was small, that our life here was limited, but she was wrong. This place isn't small, it's concentrated. Everything that matters is right here. Family, work, community, purpose. Owen nodded. Your mother was always looking for something bigger, something more exciting. She never understood that the best things in life don't announce themselves with fireworks. They whisper, Lila said. That's right. They whisper. A month after Lila left for California, Owen was closing up his shop when he heard a familiar voice behind him. Owen? He turned to find Andrea Sullivan standing by his workbench. She looked different, healthier, more confident. Andrea, it's been a while. 2 years? She smiled nervously. I wanted to thank you. For what? For suggesting I help Linda Watts. For pointing me towards something constructive instead of just wallowing in my guilt. Owen remembered the conversation. How did that work out? Better than I expected. Linda and I started a support group for women who've been targeted by romance scams. We work with the FBI now, helping identify victims and perpetrators. That's good work. It is. And Owen? We've prevented at least 12 women from losing their life savings to men like Cooper. 12 families that didn't get destroyed because we were there to warn them. Owen felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine satisfaction at someone else's success. Linda wanted me to give you this. Andrea handed him an envelope. It's from all the women in our group. Women who never met you, but who kept their families intact because you stopped Cooper before he could get to them. Owen opened the envelope. Inside was a simple card with a handwritten note. Thank you for being the kind of man who protects people, even when they don't know they need protecting. It was signed by 23 different women. We know you didn't do what you did for recognition, Andrea said, but we wanted you to know that your actions had consequences beyond just your own family. After Andrea left, Owen sat in his workshop holding the card. He thought about Cooper Blaine, about Sienna, about the choices people make and the ripples those choices create. For the first time since his marriage ended, Owen felt something like peace. 5 years passed. Lila thrived in California, eventually starting her own engineering consulting firm. She married Trevor in a small ceremony that Owen attended with pride. Sienna did not attend. Lila had made it clear that her mother was not welcome in her new life. Owen's business grew steadily. Word spread about his skill with vintage motorcycles, and customers came from across the Southeast to have their bikes restored in his shop. He hired 2 employees, both young men who reminded him of himself at their age, quiet, skilled, dedicated to their craft. One autumn evening, Owen was working late in his shop when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Sienna's number. He almost didn't answer. Owen? It's me. Her voice sounded older, tired. What do you want, Sienna? I'm dying. The words hit Owen like a physical blow. What? Lung cancer, stage 4. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months. Owen sat down heavily on his workbench stool. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm in Richmond, at VCU Medical. I was wondering, could you visit? I know I don't have the right to ask, but I'll be there tomorrow. Owen drove to Richmond the next morning, his emotions churning like a broken transmission. He hadn't seen Sienna in over 3 years, hadn't spoken to her in 2. The woman in the hospital bed barely resembled the Sienna he'd married. She was gaunt, her once beautiful hair covered by a colorful scarf. But her eyes were the same, still sharp, still intelligent. Thank you for coming. Owen sat in the bedside chair. How long have you known? 3 months. I didn't want to tell Lila until it was time. She should know. I know. I was hoping you could tell her. She doesn't take my calls anymore. They sat in silence for a while, 2 people who'd once shared everything and now struggled to find words. Owen, I need to tell you something. You don't owe me any explanations. I owe you this one. Sienna's voice was weak but determined. Cooper never cared about me. Not really. I was just a way for him to get what he wanted. I know. But I let myself believe he did. I let myself believe that someone could love me more than you did, could offer me something better than what we had. Owen said nothing. I was wrong. About everything. You were the best man I ever knew, and I threw it away for a fantasy. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to find someone else. I want you to be happy. Owen laughed, but there was no humor in it. I am happy. Alone? Content. That's enough for me. Sienna reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were thin, fragile. It shouldn't be enough. You deserve love, Owen. Real love, from someone who appreciates what you are. What I am is a 50-year-old mechanic with trust issues. What you are is a man who keeps his promises, who protects the people he loves, who builds things instead of tearing them down. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. What you are is everything I was too stupid to value. Owen squeezed her hand gently. We all make choices, Sienna. You made yours, I made mine. That's all there is. Do you forgive me? The question hung in the air between them. Owen thought about 17 years of marriage, about betrayal and gambling and forged signatures in hotel rooms. He thought about Lila's college fund and his stolen land and Cooper Blaine's smooth lies. I don't forgive you, he said finally. But I don't hate you either. You're just part of my past now. Sienna nodded. That's more than I deserve. Owen stood to leave. I'll tell Lila. She can decide for herself whether she wants to see you. Thank you. At the door, Owen paused. Sienna? Yes? For what it's worth, I'm sorry you're sick. I'm sorry it ended this way. Me too. Owen called Lila that evening and told her about Sienna's condition. His daughter was quiet for a long time after he finished speaking. Do you think I should see her? That's your choice, kiddo. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. I don't know if I can forgive her. You don't have to. But you might regret not saying goodbye. 3 days later, Lila flew from California to Richmond. She spent an hour with her mother, then called Owen from the hospital parking lot. How did it go? She apologized. I told her I needed time to process everything, but that I was glad she was finally being honest. That's fair, Dad. She said something interesting. She said you were the strongest person she ever knew, but that she mistook your strength for weakness because it was so quiet. Owen absorbed this. What do you think about that? I think she finally understood what I've always known. That real strength doesn't need to announce itself. Sienna died 2 weeks later. Lila handled the funeral arrangements, and Owen attended the service out of respect for the woman Sienna had been before everything went wrong. There were fewer than 20 people in attendance. After the burial, Lila and Owen stood together in the cemetery. Are you okay? He asked. I'm sad, but not devastated. Does that make me a terrible person? It makes you honest. I loved her when I was little, before she changed. I'll remember that version of her. Owen nodded. That's probably the healthiest way to handle it. What about you? Any regrets? Owen looked at his daughter, now 27, successful, happily married, unbroken by the chaos of her childhood. Just one. What's that? I regret that she never got to see what an amazing woman you became. Lila hugged him tightly. She saw enough. And anyway, the credit for how I turned out goes to you. We made a good team. The best. 6 months after Sienna's funeral, Owen met someone. Her name was Carol Patterson, no relation to Jennifer Patterson, the woman Cooper had victimized. Carol was a librarian in Staunton, divorced with 2 grown children. She came to Owen's shop to have her late father's 1962 Harley restored. Carol was quiet like Owen, thoughtful, careful with her words. She didn't try to fix him or change him or convince him he needed excitement in his life. She simply appreciated him as he was. They dated for 2 years before Owen proposed. The wedding was small. Lila and Trevor, Carol's children, a few close friends. They honeymooned in the Blue Ridge Mountains, riding restored motorcycles through winding country roads. On their first anniversary, Owen and Carol were sitting on their back porch watching the sunset over the 3 acres that Cooper Blaine had once tried to steal. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd handled things differently with Sienna?" Carol asked. Owen considered the question. "Sometimes. But I always come to the same conclusion, which is that some people can't be saved from themselves. The best you can do is protect the people who matter and try not to get destroyed in the process." Carol nodded. "Lila told me something interesting when we first met." "What's that?" "She said you taught her that love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who accepts you completely and chooses to build something with you anyway." Owen smiled. "Smart kid." She also said her mother never understood that the most dangerous people are often the quietest ones. Sienna always underestimated quiet people. Because she mistook silence for weakness? Because she never learned that silence has sharp teeth, Carol laughed. "That's exactly what Lila said you'd say." 10 years later, Owen retired from active motorcycle restoration, though he kept the shop open for special projects. Lila and Trevor moved back to Virginia when their first child was born, buying a house just outside Waynesboro. Owen spent his days teaching his grandson about tools and engines and the satisfaction of building things with your hands. The boy was 5 years old and already showed signs of inheriting the family gift for understanding how machines worked. One evening, while Owen was teaching his grandson to change the oil on a lawnmower, the boy asked a question that stopped Owen cold. "Grandpa, why don't I have a grandma on Daddy's side?" Owen looked at the serious little face peering up at him. "How do you explain betrayal, a destructive gambling habit, and the collapse of a marriage to a 5-year-old? Your grandma Sienna made some bad choices, buddy. Sometimes adults make mistakes that can't be fixed." "What kind of mistakes?" "She forgot that the most important thing in life is taking care of the people who love you." The boy nodded solemnly. "That's pretty dumb." "Yeah, it is." "Grandpa, are you going to make mistakes like that?" Owen looked around his workshop, at the life he'd rebuilt from the wreckage of his first marriage. Carol was in the house making dinner. Lila and Trevor were coming over later with the baby. His grandson was learning to use tools at the same workbench where Owen had first discovered Sienna's betrayal. "I already made my big mistake, buddy. I trusted someone who didn't deserve it. But I learned from it, and I won't make it again." "Good. Because I need you to teach me how to fix motorcycles." Owen smiled. "Deal." That night, after his family had gone home and Carol had gone to bed, Owen stood alone in his workshop. The building was quiet except for the tick of cooling metal and the distant sound of wind through the trees. On his workbench sat a photo that Lila had given him for Father's Day. 4 generations of Belrose men, all of them holding tools, all of them sharing the same steady gaze. Owen's grandfather, his father, Owen himself, and his grandson. Looking at that photo, Owen realized something that had taken him nearly 60 years to understand. You don't defeat betrayal by seeking revenge. You defeat it by building something better in its place. Cooper Blaine was dead, forgotten by everyone except the women he'd victimized. Sienna was gone, her memory preserved only in Lila's childhood recollections. But Owen was still here, still building, still protecting the people he loved. In the end, that was victory enough. Owen turned off the workshop lights and walked back to the house, where Carol was waiting with tea and the evening news. Tomorrow, he would teach his grandson about torque wrenches and compression ratios. The day after that, maybe they'd start rebuilding an old Triumph together. The future stretched ahead of him, quiet and solid and real. No drama, no excitement, no grand gestures. Just life, lived well, one day at a time. And Owen Belrose had learned that was enough.